On a quiet September night in 1997, as Los Angeles slept, 6 men carried out what would become the largest cash robbery in U.S. history at that time. The target? A nondescript Dunbar Armored facility in the heart of the city. No guns were fired, no alarms triggered, no emergency calls made. $18.9 million, equivalent to $37 million in 2025, vanished into the night. For months, the FBI had no leads. The perfect crime seemed to have been executed. But as the old saying goes, there's no such thing as a perfect crime, just criminals who think they're perfect. This is the story of how a trusted regional safety inspector masterminded the biggest cash heist in American history, and the single mistake that brought it all crashing down. Before we get into what happened that night, we need to understand the man at the center of it all, Alan Pace. In 1996, Pace landed a job as a safety inspector at the Dunbar Armored facility in Los Angeles. At 29 years old, he presented himself as reliable and trustworthy. His supervisors had no reason to doubt him. But behind his professional demeanor, Pace was carefully studying every aspect of the facility. The Dunbar facility wasn't just any building. It was a regional cash distribution center that processed millions of dollars daily. Money from businesses across Southern California would arrive, be counted, sorted, and redistributed. The building featured multiple security layers, cameras, time-locked vaults, and armed guards. But Pace discovered something crucial during his employment. Despite all the security measures protecting the facility from outside threats, there were gaps in the internal security system, blind spots, vulnerabilities, and most importantly, he learned the schedule and routines of everyone who worked there. After several months of observation, Pace was fired from Dunbar for reasons that remain somewhat unclear. Some reports suggest he was caught photographing the interior of the facility. Others indicate he simply had performance issues. What we know for certain is that his termination didn't stop his plans. If anything, it accelerated them. Over the following months, Pace recruited 5 childhood friends for his scheme: Eric Damon Boyd, Freddie Lynn McCrary, Terry Wayne Brown, Thomas Lee Johnson, and Eugene Lamar Hill. None had serious criminal backgrounds. They were ordinary men with ordinary jobs, pulled into an extraordinary plot. Pace's plan was meticulous. He shared detailed maps of the facility with his accomplices. He taught them about the staff schedules, the locations of cameras, and most importantly, the exact timing needed to pull off the heist. What made Pace's scheme different from most armored car robberies was its simplicity. There would be no dramatic shootout, no high-speed chase. Instead, they would exploit the trust and security flaws from within. September 12, 1997, a Friday night. While most Los Angeles residents were heading out to enjoy their weekend, Alan Pace and his 5 accomplices gathered at a predetermined location. They wore dark clothing and communication headsets. In their vehicle was everything they needed: duct tape, cable ties, and empty duffel bags. At approximately 12:30 a.m. on Saturday, September 13th, the crew approached the Dunbar facility. This wasn't a frontal assault. Instead, Pace used his insider knowledge to guide the crew to a side entrance that he knew would be accessible. Once they reached the facility, Pace's planning paid off immediately. He knew exactly when guards would be taking breaks, which areas of the building were under camera surveillance and which weren't. The crew moved through the building's blind spots with remarkable precision. When they encountered the first guard, they caught him completely by surprise. Moving quickly, they subdued him and used cable ties to restrain him. One by one, they did the same with the other guards on duty, 8 in total. With the guards secured, the crew moved toward their primary target, the money vault on the facility's second floor. In normal circumstances, this vault would be nearly impossible to breach. But thanks to Pace's insider knowledge, they knew it would be open during that specific time window for cash processing. For the next hour, the 6 men worked methodically, filling duffel bag after duffel bag with cash. They ignored coins and focused exclusively on paper money, primarily $20 and $100 bills. This wasn't just about taking money. It was about taking the right money. By 2:30 a.m., they had loaded approximately $18.9 million in cash into their vehicle. The entire operation had taken just about 2 hours from start to finish. As they drove away from the facility, Los Angeles remained unaware that it had just witnessed the largest cash robbery in U.S. history. The guards, still bound with cable ties, weren't discovered until the morning shift arrived around 6:30 a.m. By then, Pace and his crew had a 4-hour head start. The FBI immediately took charge of the investigation. Agents swarmed the Dunbar facility, collecting evidence and interviewing the bound guards. Initial suspicions naturally fell on Alan Pace due to his former employment, but there was a problem. No physical evidence tied him to the scene. The robbers had worn gloves throughout the heist. They had avoided all cameras. They had taken the security footage with them when they left. And most importantly, none of the subdued guards could positively identify Pace or any of the other perpetrators who had worn masks during the robbery. The perfect crime seemed to have been committed. In the days following the heist, the FBI formed a special task force. They interviewed current and former Dunbar employees. They examined bank records and monitored sudden cash purchases across Los Angeles. They even put out rewards for information. But for months, the investigation hit dead end after dead end. Meanwhile, Pace and his accomplices began the challenging task of laundering $18.9 million in stolen cash. They didn't make flashy purchases immediately. Instead, they slowly integrated the money into legitimate businesses. Pace invested in a real estate company. Eugene Hill opened a restaurant. Others made modest investments that wouldn't trigger suspicion. The crew had agreed to lie low and spend the money gradually over years. Had they stuck to this plan, they might have gotten away with it. But in March 1998, nearly 6 months after the heist, the first crack in their perfect plan appeared. Eugene Hill, one of the 6 robbers, gave a friend named DeAndre Horn $25,000 in stolen cash to buy cars for a planned car rental business. Hill thought this was a safe way to launder some of the money, but Horn made a critical mistake. He used some of the money to buy a Nissan Sentra from a used car dealer in South Los Angeles, and he paid entirely in crisp $100 bills. This wouldn't normally raise suspicions, except for one crucial detail. Some of those bills were from the original cash wrappers used by Dunbar Armored. The bills still had the distinctive marking from the facility. When the car dealer deposited the cash at his bank, an alert teller noticed the markings and contacted the FBI. This single mistake, failing to remove the cash wrappers from a handful of bills, became the thread that unraveled the entire scheme. FBI agents traced the car purchase back to DeAndre Horn, who quickly implicated Eugene Hill when confronted. Under intense questioning, Hill eventually gave up the other members of the crew, including Alan Pace. By August 1998, less than a year after the robbery, all 6 participants had been arrested. When FBI agents raided their homes, they discovered evidence connecting them to the heist. At Thomas Johnson's residence, they found a storage unit key that led to $100,000 in stolen cash. At Terry Brown's home, they discovered a receipt for a new pickup truck purchased with cash. But the most damning evidence came from Alan Pace's apartment, where agents found detailed hand-drawn maps of the Dunbar facility's interior, maps that matched exactly what the guards had described about how the robbers had navigated the building. The trial of Alan Pace and his accomplices began in early 1999. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Beyond the physical evidence, multiple accomplices had turned state's evidence, hoping for reduced sentences. In court, the prosecution painted a picture of Alan Pace as the mastermind who betrayed his employer's trust to orchestrate the largest cash heist in American history. His defense attorneys tried to characterize him as a minor participant who had been framed by the others, but the jury wasn't convinced. On April 23, 1999, Alan Pace was convicted on multiple charges including conspiracy, bank robbery, and interfering with interstate commerce. He received a 24-year prison sentence without the possibility of parole. Another collaborator, Eric Damon Boyd, was sentenced to 17 years due to his use of a gun and a prior criminal record. The four others who pleaded guilty received sentences between 8 and 10 years, depending on their level of cooperation with authorities. But there was still one lingering question. Where was the money? Of the $18.9 million stolen, the FBI initially recovered only about $5 million. The rest seemed to have vanished. Some had been spent on cars, homes, and businesses. Some had been given to family members and friends. And likely, some had been hidden away in locations that the convicted robbers refused to reveal. Over the years, authorities continued to track down assets purchased with the stolen money. They seized homes, cars, and businesses. They froze bank accounts connected to the robbers and their associates. By 2005, almost $10 million had been recovered. Today, authorities believe that approximately $13.5 million of the original $18.9 million has been accounted for. That leaves about $5.4 million still missing. For Dunbar Armored, the heist led to a complete overhaul of security protocols. The company implemented new surveillance systems, changed staff rotation procedures, and enhanced background checks for employees. Alan Pace was released from federal prison in 2021, having served his 24-year sentence. He has never publicly spoken about the robbery or the missing money. The other participants have similarly maintained their silence since completing their sentences. 28 years have passed since that September night when 6 men walked into the Dunbar facility and walked out with $18.9 million. The building still stands, though it's no longer operated by Dunbar. The money is mostly recovered. The perpetrators have served their time, but questions remain. Is there still money hidden away in secret locations? Did other unknown accomplices get away with portions of the cash? And perhaps most intriguingly, what would have happened if they had simply removed all those cash wrappers?